drylands. And there are cut-off points here. Generally speaking, you get, 10 inches of rain up to there. People call those deserts. And above 10 inches, they call them semi-arid lands. Right up to, 1,000 mil. 1,000 mil. Right up to about 30 inches of rain. If precipitation is less than evaporation. Where evaporation exceeds precipitation, you're still dealing, and that is a cut-off point for semi-arid lands, where precipitation and evaporation is about equal. You're getting 30 inches of rain, 30 inches of evaporation. Okay? Normally speaking, at 250 mil of rain, you'll get about, I can't get to mils, 10 inches of rain, you'll get about 6 feet of evaporation. Now, why these are interesting areas is they're all subject to salting. All are subject to salting. Salting up. Okay. I just think that's obvious. Wherever the water flow is exceeded by the evaporation, you lose your water and it deposits salts.
How much evaporation would you expect in a semi-arid situation, or would it vary?
Varies. Maximally it'd be about 18 feet per annum, and minimally it'd be about 3 or 4 feet per annum. That's the sort of range. Okay. Larry did the profile of the hills and things, mesas and all that, didn't he, for you? Yeah. Now, so our main aim here in these lands is to harvest runoff water. Water harvesting is your main theme. That's the thing we'll really get into. But to talk a little bit about the arid lands, they are a peculiar environment. Generally, a lot of them is very flat. A hill country, and they're less than 15% of hill country and foothill country, and they plateau out. And generally speaking, you're on a great plain, and then there's a scarp, and then you're on a great plain. And this sort of scarp edge, this rim country, is a relatively small area of the total landscape. There are two other things in arid lands. Let's say 15% of the total. Another 15% of the total is areas of shattered rock, which are called intake areas. Again, 15%. And it looks as though, from what we were talking about the other day, as though that really is an intake area. It's where water enters the deep leads. Water infiltrates here. So there's not a lot of intake areas right through arid lands, and you must find them. Sometimes they're deep volcanic caps where the water, you pour a bucket of water on the ground and it just disappears. Sometimes they're areas of shattered rock where enough crevices that let the water run off and straight underground, out of the sun. And these are two areas you need to identify, and once you've identified them on the ground, have a few ground truths, you can very easily map them because they're pretty constant in type. So if we had a slope map of this area and we just map all this, we'd know how much of this area will take water in, intake areas. The rest of the area doesn't absorb water easily. You get some runoff, quite a lot of runoff from it. Now, some general features of arid lands. Very few of them have reliable seasonal rainfall. Only North African deserts have always, every winter, they have some rain. Middle East, Egypt, places like that. winter rains. They're Mediterranean climates. And most deserts don't necessarily have reliable rains, and they may not be reliably seasonal. Ethiopia has two sets of rains, a winter and a summer rain. But many deserts have long periods of no rain. So that last time it rained in Central Australia, kids in high school hadn't seen rain. So they come running out and jumping around in it like you would in snow, you know. So we may have very long periods of no rain at all. I want to go carefully through a drought cycle with you, so you know your strategies. It's very important to you to know these, because you're dealing with people on the edge in deserts. Wow. Maybe I've put all these things in my pocket. I have the habit of doing that. Then I lose them. Wow. Oh, I did, look. I got lots of them. Yeah. Every time I think somebody's stolen my pens, it's me. Just normal paranoia, I guess. So let's talk about rain, or rain. And let's take a drought cycle. Say that's average year, whatever it is, 10 inches. And sometimes we'll go up there to 30 inches and we'll go down there to minus 30 inches. Can't do that. That's a rain deficit, rain excess. You have quite a regular cycle, near enough to 20 years. So these, in a sense, divide up into 4 phases. The wet phase, then the drying phase, and then the drought phase, and then the recovery. Oh boy, you are so lucky. Nobody else gets all this good stuff. God, you work to get these simple diagrams out. Yeah. So, say for instance, we talk about cattle. I know you don't want to talk about cattle. But at the height of the wet phase in Botswana, they will have 3 million cattle. 3.5 million sometimes. Because they say, oh, well, it's a great year. We'll just put buy in some stock, grow on all the calves. Then you enter your drying period, and at the base of this, they can just hang on to 200,000 cattle. So your carrying capacity, doesn't matter whether we're talking about cattle, game, rhinoceros, giraffes, doesn't matter. Your carrying capacity has a huge potential range. You know, you drop to 1/15 of your stocking rate over your cycle, of your top stocking rate. And because it's drought, 14/15 of the animals actually die and lay there, you know. Here, down here, see, I put vultures in. Vultures are fat.
Bill, what you got up there with the running the dry and the wet?
This is your wet section. Okay, this is your drying out section. This is your drought, this area, yeah. You've got some residual water in your soils here. In the late dry, you're in drought, and this is your recovery period. And as that's 20-year cycle, each of those sections go about 5 years in some ideal. In actual fact, this period can commonly span 5 to 9 years when you're in the poo here. Right. If you can understand this, you can develop very good drought management strategies. I have to say, no country has developed very good drought management strategies, so you're in a unique position. Right. Obviously, as you're leaving this high grass production, high stopping rate, you can crop. You can crop and you can cull. And it's essential that you do so. When you go through this very wet period of deserts, you should start an active culling program. And you need to cull a lot, you know. If you've got 15 rhinoceros or hippopotamus, you need to eat 14 right down here in this 4 or 5 years and leave one. Or 15 cows, you need to, or 30 cows, you need to pick 2 best cows and eat the rest, because they're going to die. And there's not much point the vultures getting fat. Therefore, food preservation strategies need to apply here too. And 2 things should typify desert self-reliance. Very large grain storages, which are common to deserts, hence all your kivas and things, all your pueblo storages. When times are good, you want to put your grain away. And then a long-term storage of meats usually is jerky. It's a very economical way to store tonnages of meats as jerkies or salted and dried meats too, which is called chaki. When you think about it, you know, chaki is the origin of jerky, right? And strangely enough, crawl is the origin of corral. So both chaki and crawl are African words. Crawl, and this came corral equals corral. I bet you thought that was Texan. And chaki become jerky. And you find almost all the words we use about deserts are African and North African. Wadi, you know, many, erg, a whole lot of things we can't talk about unless we speak some Arabic. You got zougs and dras and, you know, all your sand forms. All of these are Arabic words, all your geological terms and your soil terms of desert. What about the word alkali, alkaline, alkali, the salt, right, alkali. And what is the name of potassium in Latin? What's the sign for potassium? K. Kali. Alkali, yeah, the salt, specifically the potassium salts, and often potassium carbonates. Okay, so we're looking at the cycle in deserts, and it is a cycle, and this is not very predictable, whether we get a 5-year or 3-year or 9-year drought in most deserts, but you get it, and you get it in a cyclic way. I'd like to look closely at this recovery period here, where it has rained after the dry, and here there are abundant plant poisons produced. There are 3 main types. They are alkaloids, they are cyanides or cyanogens, things that will generate cyanide if you eat them. And they are, I said the thing the other day, what gives you big muscle? Steroids. So these 3 groups have abundant production. Up here, on the other hand, you have a different set of poisons produced by bad handling, zearalenone, and what are those things that come out of mouldy nuts? Precious. That was aflatoxin. And aflatoxin. So the plants are producing specific. So when you're down here and you have very few cattle left, and it rains, do you turn them out into the new pastures? You do not. after the rains, it's essential that you hand feed the cattle for at least 6 or 8 weeks till the leaves mature and withdraw the poisons. So it's very much a part of handling your stock. All old stock keepers know that. When drought breaks, they just move the cattle off the plains and into the bush, off the hard leaf material. And after 6 or 8 weeks, they'll cautiously try them down on the plains again. Zearalenone and aflatoxins are serious poisons, and they come from moulds, mouldering wet fruits and nuts, particularly nuts. And if livestock or people eat them, that sterilises them again. It acts like a steroid. But it also passes into the milk and the meat and again sterilises us, or causes serious liver damage too. So there are 2 areas to watch and to warn people about. I repeat it once more. Every population you're dealing with in deserts are people on the edge of survival. They don't have a lot of come and go. You can't make too many mistakes. Now, generally in deserts, you have to think about alkaline condition, and we'll go into that. The pHs are going to be 8 normally and up to 11 in excessive cases. pHs will be 8 to 11. They will be highly alkaline because the easily dissolved salts in rain are all the basic salts, and they come out and evaporate, and you leave the bases on top of the ground. Therefore, alkalinity will build up in deserts, and especially to try to cultivate deserts. It'll go from pH 8 to 11 in only a few years. pH will be high, therefore minerals will be in deficit. And the reason for that is that above pH 8, essential trace elements for yourselves and for your cattle and livestock will be locked up as carbonates. They'll be insoluble. The term in agriculture is they're unavailable. They may be there, but we can't get them. Metabolically, we can't free them from the carbonate phase. So you expect, and you get, a very high proportion of mineral deficiency diseases in livestock, and also that is the main problem with human nutrition. One rather simple test for high mineral deficiency is to have a couple of blood analyses done, and what you probably find is, for example, you'll find high blood copper level. As soon as you see that, you'll say, these people are copper poisoned. You'll know that they lack iron and zinc, and they accept copper because it's got a double plus iron. In the absence of zinc or iron, the body will accept copper. Copper carbonate is pretty soluble. Now, most of the world's desert peoples have high copper blood levels. Very little zinc, hardly any zinc in their body. Does anybody know what that might mean? Where's all our folk medicine people? Yeah, they don't develop testicles. They don't develop ovaries. 18 women to every man. No, 18, that's a bit many. 16 is common. They don't heal. Healing is extremely slow. They can't recover from wounds or injuries. Slow healing, reduced sexual function, absent sexual function, and they can't digest most of their food. Zinc is an essential coenzyme for the breakdown of almost all your food. It enters into something like 180 enzymatic actions in your body. So without zinc, you've got to eat vast quantities of food and you get very little of it. Right. Mm-hmm. You got that's what you'll see. You'll see cattle standing about like this. You know. Yeah.
Are you saying that these conditions are in this kind of desert situation always a hot pH, or is it because of the drought?
The normal condition of soils is high pH, and the normal condition of waters is high pH. So this is a normality here. They have additional problems in periods of new growth and of dampness. Right. These are separate problems from these. We're dealing with them because these factors affect everything in the desert, you know, wildlife and people. Same problem, you know, a baboon has the same problems we have. What are your zinc sources in nature? Vitamin stores. Yeah. Yeah, darkish green leafy vegetables. The tips of beans, the tips of sweet potatoes. Yeah. Not a lot of zinc there. Oysters. A lot of oysters in the desert.
A little bit in bananas.
You know what a desert oyster is, don't you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell them what a desert oyster is. No, it's the testicles out of animals.
It's also a desert oyster.
It's also a desert oyster. There aren't any oysters in the bloody desert. And the only source of zinc in the desert, the thick source of zinc, are testicles, right? But anything that's got testicles, got zinc. All the things without testicles don't have any zinc.
Some nuts.
I talked about nuts.
I'm talking about the tree-type nuts, plant-type nuts.
What sort of nuts? From memory, I think there's only a couple that have much zinc. Pecans, I think, got zinc. Yeah, we can't grow pecans in the desert. We can't grow Brazil nuts in the desert. And there's another source which I think keeps you tottering along, and there's the seeds of all the cucurbit family. Pumpkins, melons. So the seeds of all the cucurbit family. And you'll find that all your pumpkin seeds in your health food shops are grown in deserts by poor people. And they send their zinc out to you so you can have your health foods. And all the seed cucurbits are developed in the deserts. If you're just growing cucurbits only for seed, then you're bringing them in from the Asian deserts where they develop them. If you go to Afghanistan or Pakistan and you're driving along the road, you'll come to a great sheet of shiny road. That's the drying cucurbits being shelled by the passing traffic. Yeah. You'll see great sheets of them spread along the roads drying out. Because the desert peoples have found out if you don't eat cucurbit seed, well, that's it. Really, that's it. Most desert cucurbits are perennial. A lot of annual cucurbits are grown in deserts. It's a very good place for melons and pumpkins and things. And a lot of very specialised cucurbits are grown in deserts. As we're on bloody cucurbits, we'll deal with some of the special desert ones. Do you know the horned melon? No, Dianis at all? Yeah. It's a little oval cucurbit with horns. Quite tough. You don't want to tread on these. And it's sort of orange coloured and it's greenish flesh. You sort of cut it off. It's really a cucumber, you know. Very close to a cucumber. And you're not sure whether it's a fruit or a vegetable. It's like a sweetish cucumber. they are an important desert plant. They're grown by a lot of desert people, and they are perennial, and also very freely self-seeding. And the way to cook them is to stand them in the ashes until they steam, and cut a little cross on there until they steam, and then take their little heads off like a boiled egg and spoon them out hot, eat them seeds and all. There's another cucurbit widely grown in desert. It's a little larger. It's about correct size. That's a Mollison melon. You can't actually lift it up. It's A, it's difficult to get your arms around, B, you're way out here, and then you've got to get it up, and it's very funny to see people trying to pick up Mollison, and they weigh a ton. And you know, it's mostly water. Mollison melons are, again, very hardy. They spread very long runners, very large fruits. They cross with watermelons, so they're probably the same species. But they're developed purely for water. So you sow Mollison melons all across the desert, and basically you've got, 20-gallon melons sitting all over the desert. In some places you can only just move between them. And you do all your cooking in melons, and you cook all your porridges, for instance, in melon flesh, all your stews, and you can eat it. You drink it as you go. Just take a slice off it. It doesn't taste particularly fantastic, but it doesn't taste bitter. It's a no-taste melon. And it has abundant seeds. Typically, the people who grow Mollison, Africans, cut it off, scoop it out, take the flesh in for cooking, and hollow out this part, take that home in one hand, and throw all the seeds in there and dry them in their own house. So you see all through the compound, you see half melons full of drying seeds. The seeds then being an important part of the porridges because of the zinc. So melons are good. What removes zinc rapidly from your body? Excess salt, excess potash. You've got problems here because that's what's in the water. The other thing that removes zinc very efficiently from your body tissues are phytates. Where do you find phytates? In bran and beans, in wholemeal flours and in beans. So do you bounce out in the desert and give people beans and wholemeal flour? No. Well, you can for a week or two, then there's no one left. So now, what I'm actually trying to say to you is, here's a case. When you leave home, take off your expectancies and your what's the thing that makes you stupid? What are they? Preconceptions. Leave your health foods behind and think, for Christ's sake, think. I've actually known people go out to the desert and try and persuade people to eat wholemeal bread. It is not good for desert people. Particularly wheat bran. Wheat bran puts out phytates until it leaves the body. It's the most prolific bran for that. Wheat bran is very good to remove neoplasias from your lower intestine. It'll strip off your cancers, in effect. But you only need a handful every 2 weeks or something. Okay? But it's no good for keeping zinc in your body. You'll end up with no testicles if you eat too much wheat bread. I mean, I don't mind, Maybe you don't have testicles to start with, At least half of you wouldn't have. Right. And beans. And trypsin inhibitors in beans. Some beans have got very high levels of it. So you've got to cook beans and strain them and cook them and strain them and cook them and strain them, and then they're sort of edible. Beans are essentially fairly poisonous foods that we eat because they have quite a lot of protein. But you never pick the soybean, for instance, to be a health food. If you had a choice of foods, it's one of the last ones because of the essential for cooking the thing so long to destroy your trypsin inhibitors. And you've got to reject all your water all the time, wash away your trypsin inhibitors. So you're not trying to convert desert peoples to bean-eating, whole food people. Is that agreed? Right. You can take a statement, say, from the Bushmen. They'll say to you quite solemnly, you say, what are you eating today? Oh, I have a little bit of meat and some, plants. And you say, well, why do you bother to eat meat? And they'll say, because if you don't eat meat, you die. Is that plain to you? If you don't eat meat in deserts, you die. Yeah. So when you're a vegetarian, you can go and work in deserts and take all the things you eat at home with you in a big pack, and you probably make it out the other end. But you can't go and live in deserts and survive, okay? Now, a small amount of meat with your vegetables provides your iron, and iron is particularly needed, of course, for menstruating women, breeding age of women. Now, breeding is delayed very much in deserts. People don't normally menstruate to 21, 22, 23. And, the iron loss is less because the iron is less. People with dysentery, people who are menstruating, any sort of blood loss are liable to be iron deficient. It's quite hard to find iron. It's the same as zinc. And the main source of that is in the livers of animals in deserts, and you don't cook it much. You just char it, more or less kill the liver flukes and eat it. I believe that what we need to do is to do a lot of ash analyses of desert plants. And then we need to collect those ashes and use them in cooking. You'll find that all American Indians used a variety of ashes. They didn't attempt to cook without ashes in the food. For every cup of water you put in with maize, you put 2 cups of ashes, okay? And ashes were made from the long bones of deer crushed, and they were made from sage and other selected bushes. And they were the source of these minerals. Those ashes were the source of minerals. Now, so what don't you do in deserts? You don't go running out into the deserts and build smokeless stoves, do you? Why? People no longer can access their ash. You don't go up to, what's that little institute up in the California coast, always building Lorena stoves? Aproveccio. You don't carry the Aproveccio stove into the drylands. Leave it in the tropics, in the wet tropics. Because you have to cook with ash, you have to dip in ash all the time. You roll your meats in ashes. You throw ashes in with your grains when you cook them. You put ashes on your eggs. My grandmother would say, eating an egg without pepper is a little like kissing a man without a beard. Yeah. Which I, have misremembered, and I say, eating an egg without salt is like kissing a woman without a moustache. My grandmother would be proud of me to see the way I've caught on to the culture here. Okay, so I'm using nutrition and I'm using understanding of drought cycles and the changes in the vegetation to give you a sense of extreme caution. You don't go bustling down the deserts thinking you know. You don't know. You go down there and listen a lot and you watch a lot. You won't see anybody cooking without ash. See Aborigines out there cooking kangaroos, and they roll the legs in the soft ash and then they eat them, and they hang them in trees with the ash on them. You think, oh, that looks pretty dirty. It's not. It's pretty nutritious. Not gritty, it's just soft ash. But it will have most of the minerals in it. Yeah. Ash cooking, addition of ashes to food, cucurbit seeds, testicles, and the small ear bones of the mammals, the 3 bones in the inner ear, all have high zinc content. If you can find out other sources of zinc, publish it in any of our journals, because we're always looking for zinc. Even the oysters on the desert coasts only have about 2% of the zinc of oysters we're off non-desert coasts. So oysters really aren't a zinc source either, if we could find them in deserts. And you're running around wondering how to keep your mineral content high enough for your plants and your animals and your people. So, and watch them very closely. Watch the people, traditional cooking methods very closely. And, you know, they're always pounding up the seeds of melons with their porridges. They never eat porridge without melon seeds in. So they offset the phytates to some extent by extra zinc, right? And they always ferment their food. All their forages are sour porridges, fermented porridges. So they're aware of what's wrong, in the sense that if you didn't do what they're doing, you're dead. So only those who do it live to breed. And they've got this fix, and they've been living there sometimes for thousands of years. So don't go bouncing in and saying, time to change your diet, lads. Dash of yogurt and a couple of slices of soybean curd and some wholemeal bread, and you'll feel as fit as fiddles, and suddenly they all die on you. Right. They make very clever use. All desert peoples are expert animal carcass analysts, and they cut out all the organ meats first and share them up amongst different age and sex groups. The women get all the liver. The adrenals are given to the children together with the phospholipids from the brains. The men get all the testicles and the penis. I mean, you know, it's very morose sitting there eating a hen's block penis. It's tough. It's not particularly tasty, but it's got to be good for you. Yummy. I got half the left testicle of hen's block too. I said, gotta be. I was quite chuffed, you know. I was sitting out in the Kalahari with all these guys, and they, you know, get the testicles out of the hen's block, cut them into 6 bits and give me one almost. I thought, oh, that's great. They regard me as a breeding male. I thought, oh, what a compliment, you know. And like my people back home renewed my license, gave me a 15-year license. I think, God, do you really think I'm going to live 15 years more? And, you know, it sort of keeps your morale up. Yeah, right. You know how to be, Howard. You're sitting out there, you're feeling a bit off, bad morning, a bit depressed, and they hand you testicles and think, oh, huh. There might be a spark left in me yet, you know. Yeah, Marozzi melon then.
How do you pump those ear bones out?
Yeah, you just cut them out and dry them and pound them. Yep, those little the stirrups and the, yeah. Rich in zinc. Okay, so this is your expectation. Things are not going to stay good all the time in deserts. Because you have an alternation, dry and wet, you have a constant set of recessional waters. And with deserts, it's rare that any of the rivers run to the sea. And you would know that because you're Americans and you know you've got lots of great basins. All the rivers run into the centre of the basins inland. They don't run to the sea, okay? Salt Lake City, you know Salt Lake City. It sits in the bottom of the basin, doesn't it?
It used to be a free.
Oh, it will be again. Yeah, it will be again. Whenever it rains heavily, the Salt Lake will rise. It is now up over the old roads, isn't it? And it, you know, you can see bits of the salt work sticking out of the lake in the middle of. Yeah,
The road there,
there's a big road runs under that lake. Lots of Mormons lived out there under that lake. And they've bought vast engines to pump out their basin, like sort of 5,000 horsepower engines. But nobody wants the salt. So they've got nowhere to pump it to, because every surrounding basin's got another city in it. Not in my backyard, they say. We don't want your salt water. So they've got to stay there and drown. I had a narrow escape in the United States, in Pyramid Lake, another narrow escape. The cattlemen had cut off the Indians' water. Right, they dammed the river and switched it away from the reserve. And Lake Winnemucca dried up. And the Pyramid Lake was going down like this because they wanted to grow cattle. They were growing alfalfa with the water. And so Pyramid Lake's going down, down, down. And all the cutthroat trout died, which is about half their diet. But their favourite fish, the sucker, the kiwi, it was still living in the depths of Pyramid Lake. And I was out there and I realised that they weren't collecting the snow melt off the surrounding mountains. So I said, okay, we'll try and get more water into the lake from collecting the snow melt. So we surveyed a vast, 40-mile catchment groove right around the mountain chain. And we borrowed a bulldozer. And we were going to put this thing around the mountains. We were maybe 10 days off, starting off the bulldozer, when it rained. And it didn't stop raining. And Pyramid Lake filled up, and it came up over the tennis courts, and it drowned the, yeah. And I said to Gus, I said, well, we've had a narrow escape, Doug. Gus, we could have washed this whole basin out, I thank God we didn't make that collecting canal. They would have blamed us for sure, Yeah, they'd have lynched us. We'd have had to run for it.
but did you cycle check, see that you were just getting...
No, we knew they'd cut the river off, and that's why the lake was going down. So we had to try and compensate somehow, find water somewhere. And we may still have to do that groove. But meanwhile, it came up over their fish, growing ponds, and it came up over the tennis courts, and it washed those big hamburgers away.
Those big hamburgers.
Yeah, the ones where you get lots of things all the way up. Monster burgers, they were all floating away. It came up over the caravan parks, and Gus and I just sat at home and drank whiskey and thanked the Lord that we hadn't acted, Yeah, thank the Great Spirit that we hadn't been moved to act. Right. So when it gets wet, it gets pretty wet. Okay? And then it starts to get dry, but there's still a lot of moisture in the landscape, and you don't notice a lot of change until, early into this period. Things are not looking too good. But then you should have finished cropping and culling, and you should stop cropping. You should have stored your food. And you should have your stock down while they're still in very good condition to that amount of stock that'll sail through the drought without any additional feeding. Yeah.
Is that cycle, that 20-year cycle going to be the same all over the world in all the deserts?
Yeah, deserts are about 30 degrees, and that's the cycle of the high and low. And once you get the high pressure systems over 30 degrees, yeah, all the 30-degree deserts behave like that.
Is this cycle changing due to deforestation?
No, unless the precession of the Earth changes, this cycle is the constant. Some other things have other cycles on top of this. You've got a 11 and a 20-year sun cycle, and you have El Nino, upwelling cycle of the cold, or the hot water, really, that's the problem, on the Peruvian edge, blocking nutrient in the sea. So that's a bad... We're just coming out of El Nino now. But El Nino does coincide with the moon cycle.
Oh, so it's an
Yeah.
18-year.
Yeah.
So it moves up and down.
Ah.
So where are we now?
Anasazi thought we had this cycle because they have a 19-year intercept spiral, right? So they were following the moon. And the Anasazi were desert croppers, so they had desert moon calendars running.
So where are we now in the cycle? Recovery?
Let me think. Which hemisphere are we? We're coming out down south. We're here somewhere. So you guys are... We're there, so... You're there somewhere. There somewhere. Yeah.
So this is time to plant trees.
Yeah. And this is what you call the recruitment period of the desert forest. That's the name of this area here, recruitment time. And that happens about every 9 years. Recruitment of trees. It's when the desert trees successfully propagate and young trees come up. And as that is about every 9 years, recruitment time, there are two aspects to that. One thing is you shouldn't use all your range in deserts. You should use about 1/7 of your range annually so that you get some recruitment of your perennial forages and your trees. Few graziers in Australia have an 11-year cycle around their range, and they've never suffered drought and they've never suffered tree loss. But if you've got stock on your country too often, you don't get that recruitment. The other thing, if you miss 4 cycles, that is 36 years, and your trees don't recruit, none of your standing trees produce viable seed. So if you missed 30 or 40 years, then you have no seed left anyhow. So then that's the stage at which you've punctured the balloon. After that, the whole system leaks away, okay?
Couldn't you plant them?
Oh, sure you can. Yeah, you could go outside the desert, put little pots in and run back in, plant your pots. Massive job for, you know,
For a whole day.
yeah, for a few billion acres of desert. So you've got to get that recruitment period in, or you run right out of, what's the word, something cattle likes. You know, this grass is succulent and nutritious. You know, you run right out of perennial forages. And then the whole system leaks down to, it leaks away. So you'll see in the Australian deserts, you'll see nice sort of scattered forests of gidgees and mulgas, other acacias. And if they haven't any young ones under them, like there are no young oaks under the Californian oaks. Ever noticed that? You've never seen a little oak in California? That system is leaking to a final desert. If you haven't got young trees, then you can gather seed all you like from the old trees, but it won't grow. So you're looking at the last forest.
Well, that's where the grazing is right up the yoke.
Yeah.
I think the fence off and everything.
Have you ever seen a young oak in California? Yeah. Once you get your oat grass, once you get your oat grass and your frequent fires and all your grazing, you don't get enough oaks to replace at all. There are very, very few little oaks, say between Davis and San Francisco, bugger all actually.
Oh, I'm on the coast. Yeah, you're talking what's traditional.
Cattle country, yeah.
Start at the hills again.
Yeah, it looks to me like a system that's bleeding to death, right? Yeah. Yeah, once you've got annual grasses and no small trees, you're in trouble. And you can spot that immediately. You just land somewhere. I was flying my first trip into California, I looked out, oh Christ, they've buggered it. You can see it straight away. Trees have quite a long period of their lives where they produce vigorous and viable seed, maybe 30 or 40 years. Beyond that, the seed is not viable.
Like people.
Huh?
Like people.
People, probably. Your eggs finish up when you're about 56, don't they? They start when you're about 16. 40 years, you're about like a desert tree. We can get a good egg out of you early on, and some eggs from you till you're 56, then no eggs. We can take them, but they're no good. Yeah, not unlike you. Very similar. Very similar. Okay. Okay, now at this point, at the recessional stage here, the recession of waters, what do they call some songs recessional? The tumult and the shouting die, the captains and the kings depart. That's a recessional, isn't it? Pissing off. The water is leaving. Okay. You forgot the words, didn't you? You had to hum that one. You weren't sufficiently brainwashed as a child. Right. This recessional period, the waters are drying. As we're about to enter drought, it also gives us interesting opportunities. In these internal lakes, in these internal basins, and along the desert rivers, the water's going to dry up to a salt pan, which will be like there. But when it fills up, the water sitting on top of the salt water is fresh. So we're receding down this basin till when the water's too salty. And here you can plant like fury in the silts. Years 1, 2, 3, 4, too dry. So do recessional planting. If you want a name for that, there's always a name for everything, you have to take an African name. Recessional planting is called Mataplo. You follow the waters down, planting in strips, sometimes every 2 days. You walk the silts, putting out your sorghums, your sunflowers, your pumpkin seed as the waters recede. It's a very, very successful and highly productive planting procedure, and it occurs at this phase of your drought. That's the time when you want all that extra crop, because now you've got to store it. So here comes a time where, storage is critical. Store food. One of the very sad things about the modern world is that it's not long into modernisation of a desert society before they start to abandon their silos. When you see silos fall into pieces, you know there'll be a disaster. In Africa, they make gigantic bags, hires that, huge baskets, and they hang by ropes from very strong huts, and they don't touch the floor. And they fill these bags. They hang from big wooden beams in little huts, and these are full of sorghum. And in India, they make big wicker baskets, and they mud them up. And inside they plaster them with a mixture of mud, cow manure, and the dried leaves of the neem tree, which kills insects. And then they fill them up with grain, and they mud seal the lids. And these storages are in every village, and they'll coast through 3 or 4 years. And these are tragically the things. They're also obvious in all the old Pueblo settlements, those large grain storages. You can mix your grains with ash. You can roll the grains in oil. You can put powdered neem leaf in your grain, and it will keep for years.
Is there anything like the neem tree in the continental climate?
Yeah, it's Melia azideracta. Melia will go out into the deserts and go to severe frost, 5 or 6 below. Azideracta. It has the same alkaloid as it has azideractin in it. So it stops, inhibits ecdysis in insects. It can't cast their skin. So this tree, the powdered leaves, are very good insect control. And it's good, 3 leaves in warm water and, get rid of the lice in your hair. That's handy, isn't it? And then as you get more tropical, the true neem tree, you can grow the true neem tree. You grow neem here, but you grow another neem called Azadirachta indica. What am I doing this for? Oh. Indica in the tropics. So luckily you've got neem trees that will run from the equator to latitude 40, 45. Huh?